What is up, YouTube? Bobbles and Ball Cards back with another video. Hope everybody has been doing good out there today. It's Monday. Hope you don't have a case of the Mondays. We're actually flying through October. But I wanted to do a video today, and I'm going to start off by saying thank you. Today actually marks, I'll scroll up here, 6 years since I posted the first video on the Bobbles and Ball Cards channel. Throughout the 6 years, there's been a lot of different things that have happened in terms of the card space, in terms of ways that, like, even this channel, like content, videos, that sort of thing. There was the pandemic period where I was uploading pretty frequently. There was the period where I would go live every night early on. Like I had, I was talking about the old computer and stuff a couple videos ago. I was trying to use Adobe to edit videos, and I was terrible at it, and I didn't know Premiere Pro at all. So early on I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go live, and then I can interact with the chat. I'm not sitting here talking to just a computer screen. I'm actually having a conversation with folks watching. And then, the channel kind of grew based on, as you can see there on the screen, no secret, SGC. There was a lot of SGC interest, especially during the pandemic. We've seen the growth of them, from early 2020 up to, recently, and obviously now we see the U-turn being made. But I think one thing that I've learned, and this is for anyone out there, if you decide that you want to do a channel, if you want to grow, if you want to have the monetization, the revenue, the sponsors, all of that thing, you're going to have to put yourself in a position of creating content that's going to grasp viewers' attention constantly. It's very hard to mix up a bunch of different things. Now, I'm not saying you can't do like news stuff. Take Dustin, Neo, I don't know who else. Let's see. Victor, Victor, he'll have just talking head videos, and then sometimes he'll do interviews. There's several people out there that might do news stuff. They might have a mail day. They might do an interview. So there's different ways that they can go about it, but you can't go from one extreme to the other. And I learned this also on my reselling channel, where I was trying to do, going out sourcing, but then at the same time, like, my next video might be showing what's sold. You have to create an audience, and that audience is going to be picky on what they're interested in content-wise from you. And so I'm blessed to, have been able to get to over 2,000 subs. I've done 600 plus videos. That includes shorts and the lives and everything. And I've been blessed with, meeting and creating a little community making friends with people that I never would have known without doing this channel. But there's something else that might get some blowback. And one thing I've learned is, unless you are in a community of like-minded people, and when I say that, like, I had the Facebook group, and there was a community there of similar thoughts, similar collections, not necessarily on era, sport, player, but it was people collecting SGC stuff. So there was some similarities there. Some, people had things in common. But unless you're in a group where You know, you see it on the vintage side. The vintage collectors, they like sharing things with each other, their pickups. They talk about the cards, you know, that sort of thing. Unless you have that community, nobody cares what you're collecting. It does not matter how significant, how important it is to you personally. Nobody cares about what you're collecting. And I'm not saying that to be harsh, but you really have to have a true passion and a true love for what you're doing. It has to actually mean something to you, because rightfully, you might be the only person that cares any bit about what you're doing. And that is actually sad to say, because many of us started this when we were kids. We were in school. We had classmates. We had friends. You know, we would trade cards around, or, you know, sell one to a buddy if he collected this player, and you might buy something from someone else. And, you know, that's when we grew to have this appreciation, this love, this addiction to collecting sports cards. But as we grow older, we've lost touch. You know, we now run our own lives. We're busy. You know, you hear people talk about the National, and it's kind of like the homecoming or the family reunion. And a lot of that is why people go so often, because outside of those moments, a lot of this is very lonely. Again, a lot of people do not care what you're collecting. It has zero. In fact, a lot of times your collection could even invoke jealousy. It could invoke backlash. And I think about this when, you know, there's the discussions between the vintage and the modern collector and the ultra modern stuff, and, you know, wondering, well, why isn't more of it shared? Well, there's been the accusations that people pump because they're sharing their ultra modern stuff. And maybe, you know, if they're an influencer and they truly might have a passion for what they're collecting, but because they have an audience that will watch and say, oh, so-and-so is buying this player. I remember Gary Vee. Gary Vee made something. He made just a simple comment about Ronald Acuna Jr. And Acuna's prices soared. And Gary Vee got blamed for it, as if he intentionally made this simple comment of, I kind of like this Ronald Acuna kid, and it caused people to run out and buy the cards. That's kind of the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because we, at the end of the day, still have to be responsible for our own actions. And if you if you took part in that, then you were also at fault for helping drive that market. But people will do that if they feel there's opportunity to create profit. But I think many people don't want to be put in that position. They don't want to be called out. They don't want to, be spread out there. Oh, so-and-so is pumping, whatever. And if you're sharing a collection, we joke about it, laughingly, because I do not have the influence to make Jason Robertson prices go up. But it is a fun little gesture back and forth, with Carlos, Eric, Brad, Bobby, those guys, to say, oh, here comes the Jason Robertson pump. It's fun. I don't have that kind of influence, but there are people out there, and I understand that they may not, they may get tired of being blamed for something because they may truly have a passion for what they're collecting. And I look at this, and you may wonder, well, what is all this coming from? Well, again, 6 years. I kind of can tell what videos are going to do well. Now, these are my lives, SGC previews, especially during the pandemic. They would get a lot of views. This was, I believe, our first one ever. This I think was the Jordan we sent in, and it was an update thing. But the SGC updates did pretty good. This one here was awesome. The mantles that came back and everything. So those videos did pretty good. The lives. Now I go over here to just regular videos, And you're going to see, what are my top videos? Well, an eBay video. This was one that was funny. I was being silly putting the Luka and everything because when that Luka sale and it had dropped in value or whatever, it was just a silly little, abort. The sports card hobby is over. But it was attention grabbing and people came and watched it. Again, notice a coincidence? eBay updates, gets views. The SGC, talking about the changes that just recently happened. That video was 3 months ago. It's one of my top videos. This was the OG. This was the first ever submission reveal. This was the birth, really, of Baubles and Ball Cards. This was the video that I showed my first ever submission with the cards that I had gotten back. This would have been around March. Let's see here. March 31st, 2020. Last day of March. Pandemic had struck. PSA, they were shut down. Beckett was shut down. CGC didn't exist at the time. And people were coming to see what the SGC thing was about. Video did really well. So, you can kind of see here another eBay one. SGC sales, eBay sales. I had sold some cards and was sharing some of the data on my sales. This one was just a weird one. Do not buy this Julio Rodriguez card. But you can see SGC drove this channel. SGC eBay drove this channel. Here's another eBay one. Here's another one down here, eBay. Those videos were my best. And if SGC continued the train rolling along and I stopped doing a lot of the updates, I'd stopped doing the sales data. And the reason why, really, if you look back on it, they started offering bulk subs to a lot of people, a lot of shops, a lot of people started bulk submitting. Then a lot of the influencers started picking up and, this SGC update dropped. So my channel started to not become the go-to for the news because some of the other influencers who had larger audiences were already getting the news. And so, whereas in the beginning, when SGC was kind of the little guy and they were growing, people knew. Like, I've literally been out to sales, hours away from here, sourcing for my reselling business, and people recognize me and say, hey, I know you. You're the guy on YouTube. You're the SGC guy. They didn't know me a bit for reselling. They knew I was the SGC guy. And that's kind of really where this channel got its identification. It got its, its growth, its audience. But when that started phasing out, there really wasn't a use. Like, I don't want to be on repeat. I don't want to repeat what 10, 15 other people had already said in videos unless I had some information direct from the source that I knew they may not have because they were just picking up an Instagram reel or whatever. Or if I had updates that were directly related to the bulk submissions that I needed to share or explain some changes or whatever, then I would do a video and they would do really well. Otherwise, there wasn't much point for me to do them because the news was already out there. So that's kind of when things started, shrinking down. This channel was built on a topic that grew in popularity and other people, started discussing the topic. And so I personally had, I had other things going on as well. I was busy. And so I just stopped doing as many videos. And then, of course, people went back to work. The whole content space changed. I don't sit and do news videos every day. And so over time, it would be a video here or there that might get some views, get some people's attention. I'm going to go to my most recent stuff. And so here's my videos in order. And you can see, 212, 127, 178, 218, 450, 246. Not bad. $394, not bad, 3 to 400, right? But then here, this right here, talking about collecting. But this video right here, 38 views 5 days ago. Now, one could argue the thumbnail's not the greatest. Maybe the title isn't clickbaity enough or catchy enough or whatever. But this isn't the first time that I have done collector-focused videos. Here's one. Collecting memories on sports cards. 25 views. I added some new sports cards to my collection. 63 views. Let's see here. Sharing my graded Washington Nationals. 63 views. Football cards, stories, memories. I shared a lot of stuff about experiences that I had with football players and, running a website for an NFL player. Showed some of my personal collection of things that I got done in person, and 34 views. So over time, and this goes on and on back, it just, the videos don't perform. They don't. The vintage videos can do well if it's a creator that is part of that circle that, has a group there, a community formed. Maybe they're in a chat group or whatever, text group. And so there's folks there that will pick up on it. I've seen people that since 2022 did not have a YouTube channel, and today they're popping up on, collaborations on podcasts or, the silly little YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame. They're already inducted in it. Why? Well, because they have very high-end vintage sport card collections, and so the people who are all in that space, they look at them on a pedestal because, they're a true collector, and the oohs and ahs of the nature of things in their collection gets them the attention and the votes of the community that puts all that together. But if you just sit here and I share my Michael Taylor collection, nobody gives a shit. Nobody. And I understand that. I'm not sitting here complaining. I understand that. But this is where the content, the social media, the nature of calling someone or, dictating what is or isn't a collector, who is or isn't a collector, what should or shouldn't be collected, that's where things get skewed. Because my Michael Taylor collection is one of my favorite things in my entire collection. My favorite card is a card of me and my kids with Victor Robles, and I have a Victor Robles collection. Nobody cares about that. It's Victor Robles and Michael Taylor. But as collectors, we're supposed to support each other. It's supposed to be this community, this hobby, but those videos don't get any damn attention. There's literally no reason to even do them, except for your own personal self-being, sharing it, going back, looking at it later on. That's the only reason. Because the audience out there really doesn't care. And I'm sharing this because I know there are some creators out there that have struggled. They've not gotten to 1,000 subs. They don't understand it. There's some people that do content all the time, and they're sharing their collection. They're talking about collecting and all this stuff, and it just isn't working. Well, the problem is you haven't built the audience, because sharing your personal collection and stuff, unfortunately, is not going to get put on the radar. People don't care. They don't. It does not benefit them anyway. It doesn't entertain them because it's not what they are collecting or interested in. They have no commonality to it. So you're just putting up a video to share what you have a passion for, what you love, what you enjoy, and what you collect. But you're one of very, very, very few who give a damn. And I'm going to take this over, and I'm going to share that during the podcast last week when we recorded, I also discussed going to the game, going to Michael Taylor's last game, going to the last game of the season for the Nationals, how long it had been since me and my wife had been to a game, all of these things, how I obtained that jersey, the number 18 Taylor, how, full circle took it back to the ballpark for his last game. He's on a completely different team now. He's been on 4 teams since he left Washington. And somehow everything, the tides all aligned, and I was able to get him to sign that jersey. There's not been one comment, even on the podcast, about sharing that story. Why? Because nobody cares. It's Michael Taylor. It's not Michael Jordan. If it was Michael Jordan, hell, my channel would be massive. If people knew that I personally, had a connection, a relationship, met Michael Jordan or something, and I'm not saying like I know Michael Taylor and we're best buddies, but no, I have a point of contact. His wife will read my Instagram messages. She responds on and reacts on the posts and stuff. She was in our Facebook group, so there was a little bit of a connection there. But if that was Michael Jordan instead of Michael Taylor, shit, my channel would be massive. People would be wanting me to do stuff for them because, oh my God, it's Michael Jordan. But it's not who everybody else collects. It's not what anybody cares about, right? So, anyway, I know I'm rambling right now and it sounds like I'm ranting. Really, I'm just sharing thoughts. I'm not mad. I'm going to continue sharing my collection. I'm going to continue talking about it. And whether 30 people watch it or 300 or 300,000, I'm doing this for me. But I did want to just get on and really say thank you to those who have been around for the last 6 years, who have watched videos, who have made it, this silly little thing of, even doing these videos worth it. The friendships I've made, the connections, all of that stuff, the stories that have been told and shared. That's what's important to this. But I wanted to mention the whole collecting thing and why those videos don't go. People get so pissed off at influencer channels. You got the channels that want to, dictate and talk shit about the influencer channels, and those do pretty well. But we all want to talk about, collecting and this and that, but the support system there is only for certain groups of collecting. There is not a support system there. There is not a interest there for most of the things that are collected in the space. And, we want to talk about making this hobby awesome and keeping it that way and this and that and the other, and who's a collector, who's not a collector, and the right way, the wrong way, and all this other crap. But yet it's only supported if you fit in specific niches. So keep that in mind if you want to do content. If you're a collector and you want to do collecting content specifically, it's just the cold hard truth. Most people don't care. That's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know. Am I wrong? Am I just an old man with a gray beard rambling and ranting? Either way, I appreciate all of you. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. And until the next video, I'm out.